Hello, we take up session number 7. This is one of the very important part of military law where certain fundamental rights of the armed forces personnel have been restricted, have been cut down, they have been clamped. This I am saying in the context of Part 3 of the Constitution, which provides the fundamental rights to all citizens and in some cases to those who are not citizens. Now, those fundamental rights have been restricted and curtailed uh, for soldiers, others who are subject to Army Act, and we shall see these in a little greater detail. And where the Constitution of India has dealt and restricted these fundamental rights, that is a clear indication about the role and position of the armed forces, what they are expected to do, that was known to the framers of the Constitution. I take you to the preamble, and preamble, the complete text is there on the slide in front of you. I highlight the word fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual, and the words that follow thereafter are and the unity and integrity of the nation. Therefore, this notion about the unity and integrity of the nation, by incorporating it in the preamble, it permeates throughout the spirit of the Constitution, that these aspects, unity and integrity of the nation, were paramount for the framers of the Constitution. If we move further to Article 1, you see it says name and territory of the Union, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And I take you thereafter to clause 3 and subclause 7, which says such other territory as may be acquired. Now, why I am highlighting this portion? Because in 1950, when the Constitution had been framed and came into effect, before that, during the deliberations, the framers, members of the Constituent Assembly, were clear that there may be a situation when India acquires certain other territory. And this acquisition was not going to be through peaceful means. There, the operations of the armed forces would be clearly envisaged. And the point I'm trying to make is that the role of the armed forces in this manner was understood and was envisaged when the Constitution was being drafted. Now, part 3 of the Constitution, which relates to fundamental rights, and here the word right, its definition, it states in law lexicon that standard of permitted action within a certain sphere. In other words, a right is any action of a person which law permits. When it is said that one has a right to do something, that denotes that with regard to that right, whatever action is permissible, maybe within a laid down sphere, that can be taken by that person because he has a right to do that. Relating to fundamental rights, Articles 12 to 35 in Part 3, they deal with these various rights. At this stage, one may appreciate that there are different types of rights, for example, fundamental rights, statutory rights, and constitutional rights. The difference between fundamental rights and constitutional rights is that fundamental rights are only those which are indicated in Articles 14 to 32 or have been read by the judiciary as forming part of these 14 to 32 number of articles. articles. Whereas other articles, for example, 310 is not part of Part 3. Nevertheless, since it appears in the Constitution, therefore it is a constitutional right. Now, I am not going to discuss here what are the fundamental rights. I move to Article 33. Now, 32 was in relation to the power or the role of the Supreme Court. Immediately after that is Article 33, and that speaks about power of Parliament to modify the rights conferred by this part in their application to forces, etc. And it conveys that the Constitution permits the Parliament that when it comes to the fundamental rights, they can be modified insofar as their application to the members of the forces are concerned. We'll see this in greater detail. Now, Article 33 says, Parliament may by law determine to what extent any of the rights conferred by this part shall in their application to, and then move to the last two lines, be restricted or abrogated so as to ensure the proper discharge of their duties and maintenance of discipline amongst them. I would like to lay emphasis that firstly, the authority is of Parliament, and if that authority is to be exercised, then Parliament is to make a law, and that law will determine, will indicate, will show as to what extent, up to what extent the rights which are there in Part 3 shall be either restricted or abrogated. And why is this to be done? The purpose is so as to ensure the proper discharge of their duties and maintenance of discipline amongst them. So if any right has been taken away by Parliament, then it should only be for the purpose, the twin objectives which are here. Number one, to ensure proper discharge of their duties, the members of the armed forces, and it is not or, and maintenance of discipline amongst them. So therefore, these twin objectives have to be met. And under this article, the category of persons who have been included are the members of the armed forces, members of the forces charged with the maintenance of public order, next persons employed in any bureau or the organization established by the state for the purpose of intelligence or counterintelligence, and lastly persons employed in or in connection with telecommunication systems for the purposes of any force, bureau or organization. Therefore, the tinkering of fundamental rights by way of restriction or abrogation can only be done to these category of persons who are enumerated in Article 33. Now the salient point says, again, I highlight that restriction or abrogation, this can only be done by the Parliament. It cannot be done, say for example, by judiciary or by the President or by the Council of Ministers. The authority vests in the Parliament. Number two, they have to make a law for this, and for the purposes to ensure these are the purposes, proper discharge of their duties, maintenance of discipline among them, and what the Parliament by law can do is determine as to till what extent such restriction or abrogation is allowed. Now restriction, the word means is to control, limit, bound or circumscribe. Now this is restricting, and abrogation means repeal or do away with, and therefore any of those fundamental rights by virtue of the use of the words abrogation can be totally done away with. Now therefore this indicates the paramount need of discipline and probity under which a number of rights have been restricted or controlled. What are these? Let us see them. For example, Army Act Section 21 is the one that operates in this regard. It says power to modify certain fundamental rights in their application to persons subject to this Act, subject to the provisions of any law for the time being in force relating to the regular army or to any branch thereof, the central government may, by notification, make rules restricting to such extent and in such manner as may be necessary the right of any person subject to this Act. You would appreciate that Article 33 spoke about Parliament by law. So Parliament had to make law, but whereas under Section 21, the Parliament has made a law enabling the central government under Section 21 to make rules. So it would become clear that what was within the domain of the Parliament by virtue of the wordings of Section 21 has been entrusted and has come in the lap of the government to make rules. Now, what are the rules? There are three clauses under Section 21. Number one, to be a member of or to be associated in any way with any trade union or labor union. And it goes on to say any society, institution, or association of any class of society. So, therefore, the first action with regard to curtailment or abrogation is that membership of any trade union or labor union or any of these societies has been denied to the members of the armed forces. Secondly, clause B says to attend or address any meeting or to take part in any demonstration organized by any body of persons for any political or other purpose. Therefore, any meeting, organization, get together for any political or other purposes, a person subject to Army Act is forbidden to attend. He cannot attend and therefore he cannot address also. And thirdly, in clause C, that the right to freedom of speech has been taken away because of the words used to communicate with the press or to publish or cause to be published any book, letter, or other document. And therefore, access to media or use of media, and this would include now social media, has been restricted and abrogated because of Army Act Section 21, Clause C. Certain comments which I have already made, I would like to reiterate them. Restriction is not only with regard to trade union or labor union, but it extends to any society, institution, or association, or any class of institution or association. Therefore, one can say that and membership of any society, institution, or association stands curtailed, restricted, or forbidden. Thereby, you see that Article 19(1) makes a relaxation for membership of a recreational or religious nature with prior permission of the superior officer. So, a little leeway has been given by Army Rule 19(1), which says, okay, it's not a total ban to join any society, institution, or any class of institutions or associations. Well, one may, if one wants, apply to the superior officer that let me go and join this recreational or religious nature organization or institution or society. The heading of Rule 19 speaks of unauthorized organization. Now look at this. These strong words indicate an exclusionary and unacceptable approach, that these other organizations are unauthorized and therefore nobody can go and be associated with the organizations that are not authorized. Now, by virtue of this rule, Army Rule 21, read with Army Rule 19(1), membership of academic or professional bodies is also excluded. Now, say for example, the neurosurgeons in the Army Medical Corps or the pathologists or membership of JAG officers to say Supreme Court Bar Association, Institute of Chartered Accountants, for the accounts branch officers, say of Indian Air Force, etc., stands forbidden. Now, Army Rule 19 that was referred to in the earlier slide states that what was there in the Act, same has been inserted in the rules. No person subject to this Act shall, without express sanction of the central government, take official cognizance or assist or take any active part in any society, etc., and be a member of or associated in any way with any trade union or labor union, etc. So these have been clubbed, the two provisions, and under the heading of unauthorized organization, and therefore it would have made it clear to you that this is how the fundamental rights stand restricted or abrogated. Now moving on to remainder portion of part 3, the right to consult and be defended by a legal practitioner of one's choice is enshrined under Article 22, which is there for all citizens and even others. But an accused during his trial by summary court-martial, I am talking about the military law, has no right to be defended by a counsel. SCM has wide powers expanding to dismissal from service and up to 1 year imprisonment. For that, relevant section is 120, and now that stands curtailed, restricted. Now, while a citizen, a normal citizen, can go and engage an advocate or a counsel of his choice because of Article 22, but an armed forces personnel who's being tried by summary court martial, and mind you, summary court martial can take away his right of employment by award of dismissal and even award 1 year imprisonment, he has been denied such a right. Certain statutory rights also have been affected. For example, there's an Army Order 14 of 2004 which forbids marriage to a foreign national unless the permission has been given, or employment with a commercial firm after retirement. Regulations para 341, or retention of gifts received beyond a certain value, para 344. Now these illustrate that the statutory or regulatory restrictions are also there on other than fundamental rights. I wish to present certain case law in this regard where the constitutional courts, various high courts and Supreme Court, have at different times examined the legality of certain orders, instructions issued by higher authorities, including the central government. There is a landmark case of R. Viswan, where armed forces, this phrase was liberally interpreted to include non-combatants who are not otherwise subject to military law but who form part of the armed forces, their duty being to accompany, serve, or follow the armed personnel on active service. They are called GREF. Now, the GREF personnel, they are non-combatants. They are not otherwise subject to military law, but it was included, it was indicated in the orders of the Supreme Court in this matter pertaining to 1983 that they would also come within the purview of Article 33. Now, Parliament, again, I am highlighting this, which I had indicated a little earlier. In Viswan's case, Parliament held that instead of imposing restrictions in the law itself, Parliament has empowered central government to impose the restrictions subject to such limitations as may be laid down in that law, which is being made by the central government, and to the overall conditions provided in Article 33. And therefore, what was within the domain, exclusive domain of Parliament, has been used by Parliament to give that power, to provide that power to the central government, and that was held to be legal by Supreme Court in R. Viswan's case. Thirdly, there's a well-known case of Ramsarup, where the Supreme Court said that each and every provision of the Army Act is a law made by Parliament, and that if any such provision tends to affect the fundamental rights under Part 3 of the Constitution, that provision does not on that account become void, as it must be taken that Parliament has, in exercise of its powers under Article 33 of the Constitution, made the requisite modification to affect the respective fundamental right. What it conveys is that an exclusive assertion or a statement in the law made by the Parliament in, say, for example, Army Act is not necessary pointing to Article 33. It may be said that Parliament is aware of Article 33, and thereafter, once it makes any law, it is to be taken that Parliament was aware of the wordings of the reach and the purpose of Article 33, and that should suffice. Now, Article 1 and 33, in a matter where the General Court Martial had sentenced the petitioner, again in Ram Sarup's case, who was the sepoy, to death under Section 69 of the Army Act, read with Section 302 of IPC, for shooting dead two sepoys and a tehsildar, and the sentence stood confirmed by the central government. The court, which was a 5 judges bench, held that petitioner made no request for being represented at the court martial by a counsel of his choice. Now, here, what has the court said? Court said that you have not produced any evidence that you had made a request to the court martial that you want to be represented by a counsel of his choice, and since you did not make any such request, the question of refusal of such request does not arise, and there has been no violation of the fundamental rights of the petitioner in getting a counsel of his choice. Now look at the enormity of the result or the consequences where a sepoy has been tried for an offence of IPC section 302, and the sentence of death stands confirmed, and where he had been denied, where he did not have a representation by a counsel, Supreme Court said that please show us when did you make a request, and since you did not make a request, the question of its denial does not arise, and therefore there is no illegality and there is no denial. Now these are very strong words, and the consequences may be understood. In Jesuratnam's case, who was the squadron leader of Indian Air Force, Supreme Court said, it's actually Delhi High Court said that period of pre-conviction detention cannot be set off against period of sentence under the Act, and this denial does not violate Articles 14, 21 and 33 of the Constitution. Now, where equality before laws was being argued, and in case of a normal citizen who is not a member of the armed forces, his pre-trial conviction can be set off, but such provision was not to be read with regard to the persons in uniform. That is what in the squad leader Jesuratnam's case was held by Delhi High Court. As opposed to these provisions, one may like to appreciate what is the position now, say, of Western countries. For example, there is an organization known as EuroMIL, which is a European organization of military personnel and trade union that aims at servicing and advancing the human rights and fundamental freedom of soldiers by monitoring European developments and advocating the association's interest, and the armed forces personnel in those jurisdictions are being allowed to form and join trade unions, etc. Well, that may be the position there, not so in India. Therefore, in the end, I would like to highlight that it needs to be borne in mind that the very nature of military service demands highest standard of discipline, because it's only a disciplined, well-behaved and force can be trained to be combat ready, and they alone would be able to properly discharge their duties. And with that necessity in mind, it is argued and it is to be understood that the Constitution has included Article 33 in part 3. Thank you.